Leo fastened each button on his shirt as if he were sealing a will, one by one. The digital clock on the bedside table coldly displayed 6:07 p.m. He had nearly half an hour before the car arrived to pick him up, but his heart was already pounding in his chest like an engine forced to roar at full capacity. The tiny studio apartment in the Bronx was submerged in a suffocating silence broken only by the faint ticking of the clock and his own heavy breathing. He glanced at his reflection in the mirror on the closet door. A stranger in an expensive designer suit stared back at him. He was ready. He flopped down on the edge of the bed, a feverish feeling rising from the depths of his memory. 4 months ago, Leo was living a very different life. A life familiar to thousands of other young men struggling in New York, waking up before the city, returning home after it was exhausted, and his wallet always on red alert. His days were an endless chain of food deliveries under the harsh summer sun or in the biting winter cold, interspersed with seasonal jobs in Brooklyn warehouses. But Leo never bowed his head. He had a smoldering fire in his chest that poverty could not extinguish. That fire always urged him on. One day I'll make it too. And then on a Saturday evening, after an exhausting week of work, his life took an unexpected turn. He was working an extra shift as a doorman at the Obsidian, a rooftop bar in the meatpacking district, a place reserved for those who don't need to look at the prices when ordering a drink. Leo was all too familiar with the condescending glances the people who passed him without a word simply because he was wearing a security jacket. But that night, everything changed. She arrived around 11 p.m., a glossy black sedan with tinted windows pulled up right in front of the entrance. 3 girls got out, but it was she who sucked all the air out of the surroundings. Aria, a name like a melody, both ethereal and powerful. But it wasn't her beauty that was overwhelming, it was her aura. She walked like someone who had never had to ask for anything a second time in her life. She stopped in front of him, looking directly into Leo's eyes. "Are you part of the decoration here, or do you actually work?" she asked, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. Leo let out a soft chuckle. "I work here, but I have to admit, I'm also quite decorative." She burst out laughing, a sound that was clear and powerful. Leo felt his stomach clench, a churning that wasn't from hunger. Aria opened her designer handbag, took out her phone and handed it to him. "Put your number in here, and don't make me regret it." Then she disappeared through the door, melting into the neon lights and the pounding bass. Leo stood there, stunned, a foolish grin still on his face, his heart feeling like it would leap out of his chest. The next day, she texted first. "Brunch, 11 a.m. tomorrow. I'll send the address." Leo stayed up all night. The following day, she was waiting for him at a luxurious restaurant overlooking Central Park. She didn't say much, but her eyes did. And from that day on, things accelerated at a dizzying pace. He got a taste of a life he had previously only seen in movies. As the days went by, Aria called him often sometimes just to hear his voice, she said. She listened to him talk about his struggles, about his dream of starting his own small delivery company. One evening she transferred $5,000 to him. "To fix up your old van," she said. Another time she gave him an expensive Swiss watch for no particular reason. "When you check the time, I want you to feel at ease. You've carried enough burdens." They frequented exclusive cocktail bars and private yacht parties. She took him everywhere, introducing him as "my man," always proud, always clinging to him. And most importantly, she paid for everything. She covered all the expenses. Leo felt like he was living in a dream with no expiration date. He, a nameless poor boy who used to dream under the streetlights, now believed this was love. Sometimes he wondered how a girl like her could even notice someone like him. But whenever he dared to ask that question, she would look him straight in the eye and answer, "Because you're real, Leo. In a world full of fakes, you are the only real thing. And I cherish what is real." On a Wednesday morning, Aria visited him as usual. "My parents want to meet you this Sunday, 7 p.m., she announced. Leo froze, his gaze fixed on an indefinite point in space. He should have been happy, even proud. This was a step any man would hope for. But something inside him refused to rejoice. "Isn't it too soon?" he asked timidly. "Too soon." "Why did you think you would be my little secret forever?" Aria retorted. "No, I mean, you're a wonderful girl, your family must be too, and You're just the man I chose," she interrupted. "And believe me, in my family, no one argues with my choices." And Leo, as always with her, was subdued by a certainty that was not his own. The next day, Aria placed a black box on his coffee table. "This is what you'll wear when you meet my parents." Inside was a perfectly tailored suit and a pair of dark brown leather loafers. She added with a wink, "I want them to see what I've chosen. And I always choose very well." Leo felt like he was suffocating. Sunday arrived too quickly, and that's why he was standing here preparing for the fateful meeting. He smoothed down the lapels of his suit one last time, the outfit feeling like a foreign skin on his body. The black car was waiting below. A sense of unease coiled in his gut like an undercurrent. He didn't know why, but he felt like he was willingly walking into a beautifully decorated trap. He walked out the door, feeling like a prisoner heading to his own execution. The Uber Black arrived at precisely 6:30 p.m., as silent and luxurious as a phantom. Leo stepped inside the cool air, and the smell of new leather immediately enveloping him, a stark contrast to the shabby hallway of the apartment building he had just left. The car glided through the Bronx night, the familiar red brick buildings and streetlights receding behind him, giving way to the wider, cleaner avenues of Manhattan. The journey to the Upper East Side was like passing through an invisible gateway to another world. The noisy bodegas were replaced by high-end boutiques with exquisitely lit window displays. Tenement buildings gave way to stately brownstone mansions. The silence here was different, heavy and powerful. The car finally stopped in front of a tall, impeccably maintained townhouse at the end of a tree-lined cul-de-sac. It wasn't just a house, it was a fortress. Leo stepped out of the car. The tall, wrought-iron gates opened without a sound, as if sensing his presence. A uniformed butler without a word motioned for him to enter. Leo stepped into the grand foyer and felt a sudden change in temperature. The air inside was cool and still. The polished marble floor reflected the soft light from a massive crystal chandelier. Everything exuded a discreet but overwhelming elegance. "Leo, my love," a voice called from the top of the stairs. Aria was descending slowly, a radiant smile on her face. She wore a crimson silk dress that clung to her body, her black hair styled in an elegant chignon. She gave him a light, deliberate kiss on the lips, then turned to her parents, who had just emerged from an adjoining room. "Father, Mother, this is the man I've been telling you about." Leo smiled, trying to hide his nervousness. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Vanderbilt." "Welcome, young man," said Aria's father, Harrison Vanderbilt, shaking his hand. His handshake was firm but cold. "Did you find your way all right?" "Yes, sir, thank you. Your home is beautiful." "It was Aria who insisted on this meeting," added her mother, Eleanor. Her voice was as smooth as velvet, but held a hidden sharpness. "You know she doesn't invite just anyone here." The three of them shared a soft laugh so synchronized it seemed rehearsed. Leo laughed along reflexively, feeling like an amateur actor trying to fit into a play for which he didn't know the script. Aria took his hand. "Come, let's go to the dining room." He followed her into the dining room. The table was set with an almost ceremonial precision. Fine china plates, gleaming silver cutlery, and sparkling crystal glasses under the candlelight. "I hope you're hungry, my love," Aria whispered. "Mother made your favorite." "My favorite?" he asked quietly. Confusion flickering across his face. "Venison stew. You told me once you loved it as a child." Leo racked his memory. He had never said that. He had never even eaten venison. But he smiled, so as not to be rude. "Oh, yes, that's wonderful." The dish was served. It was a thick, dark stew that gave off a rich aroma of herbs and something wild he couldn't identify. He took a bite. The sauce was rich, slightly bitter. The meat had a strange texture, unbelievably tender, almost melting in his mouth. He wanted to ask what kind of meat it was, but he didn't dare. "It's delicious," he said with a forced smile. Eleanor looked up at him, her cold blue eyes seeming to pierce through him. She gave a slight nod. "Eat up, son. You'll need your strength for what's to come." Leo looked up, a chill running down his spine. "I'm sorry." "For the rest of the meal, of course," Harrison interjected quickly, pouring more red wine into his glass. "We still have dessert." They laughed together again, a small discreet laugh. Leo continued eating, no longer feeling hungry. The more he chewed, the heavier his jaw seemed to become. He looked up at Aria. She was smiling at him, a beautiful but empty smile. After the last bite, the world around him began to blur. His hands trembled. A strange heat rose to his forehead. He grabbed the glass of water in front of him and drank it down, hoping it would calm him. But it was useless. He slowly stood up. I think I need to use the restroom." Then the floor seemed to give way beneath him. His legs buckled. He heard the clatter of a falling chair. Then darkness. He felt a warm breath on his face. Footsteps, unintelligible whispers. Leo opened his eyes. He was lying in an ebony coffin in a room bathed in a dim reddish light. Around him, candles were placed directly on the floor, ceramic bowls filled with a dark liquid, and seashells arranged in strange patterns. He wanted to sit up, but his body wouldn't respond. Only his eyes could move. Around the coffin there they were. Aria, her father, her mother. They were wearing deep red robes, slowly circling the coffin and chanting in an ancient language he had never heard. Eleanor poured a thick black liquid over his body. Then Harrison spoke, his voice echoing in the silent room. "May the soul of this one be the key that opens the gate. May he bring us 6 months of peace, 6 months of prosperity, 6 months of power. May the will be done," the others responded in unison. They raised their hands. An icy wind swept through the room. Leo felt something being pulled from his chest. A pressure, a violent tearing. Life left his body. Then, hovering above his own body, his spirit watched the scene in disbelief. And Aria leaned down close to his face. She whispered, "You were real and perfect, Leo. Just like I told you." The Vanderbilts were no ordinary family. They were pillars of a secret order, an ancient cult whose roots ran deep into the foundations of New York's power for generations. Aria was not a lucky girl who had accidentally fallen for a poor boy. She was the key to the covenant, the sacred offering. Periodically, it was she who had to find the one whose sacrifice would be most complete, someone without suspicion, without defense. It was she who chose, who seduced, and who delivered. The covenant stated that power would flow as long as young lives were felled, that a man had to die for the Vanderbilt name and legacy to live on. Blood had to be shed in peace, not in violence. That's why Aria had treated Leo with such care and generosity. He had to come of his own accord, eat of his own accord. He had to offer himself without knowing it. When the ritual was over, deep in the night, his body was silently taken back to the Bronx apartment by 2 men in black. They placed him in bed, carefully arranged as if he were asleep. His body was drained of life, his face peaceful. There were no signs of an unusual death. No wounds, no signs of a struggle. The medical examiner would conclude it was a sudden heart attack or a brain aneurysm. A tragedy, but a natural one. Leo's spirit hovered near the ceiling, watching it all in horrified silence. He saw his lifeless body placed on the creaky bed, a grotesque contrast to the polished ebony coffin just hours before. He understood. The entire relationship, the gifts, the sweet words. It was all an elaborate charade for this moment. In another neighborhood of the Bronx, Maria Leo's mother always said that her son and the sun rose together. Every morning, as soon as Leo opened his eyes, the first thing he did was call his mother. Sometimes just to say, "Good morning, Mom." Sometimes just to hear her voice. It was their ritual, an invisible thread connecting mother and son. But that morning, the phone remained silent. At first, she thought he must have forgotten. Maybe he was too tired after a late night at work. But as the morning wore on without a call, her heart began to tighten. A sense of unease crept into her mind. By noon, she couldn't stand it anymore. She called him. The phone rang and rang, then went to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. Leo, son, it's me. Call me back as soon as you get this. I just want to know you're okay. Fear gripped her. This wasn't Leo. Her son would never make her worry like this. She didn't wait another second. She grabbed her coat, rushed out the door, and caught the nearest subway. The trip from her neighborhood to Leo's was only 20 minutes. Today it felt like an eternity. Every stop, every train whistle, every unfamiliar face on the car heightened her fear. She practically ran through the familiar streets leading to Leo's building. She climbed the 4 flights of stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. She stood before apartment 3B, knocking loudly. Leo, open up, it's me. No answer. Only a heavy silence. Leo had given her a spare key for emergencies. With trembling hands, she fumbled in her purse for the cold metal. It barely fit in the lock. The door swung open, and there she saw her son. He was lying in bed, his eyes closed, one arm dangling towards the floor. He looked like he was sleeping a deep and peaceful sleep. Leo. She breathed a sigh of relief, but then a chill ran down her spine. The room was unusually cold. Leo. Wake up, honey. You scared me to death. She walked over to the bed and placed a hand on his shoulder, and then her world collapsed. His body was cold, stiff, heavy under her hand. Leo, my son, Leo. She shook him desperately, but his body was unresponsive. A scream tore through the silence of the room, a scream not from her throat, but from the depths of a mother's soul. The whole building seemed to wake up. Neighbors came running. Doors flew open. Soon the news spread like wildfire. Leo in 3B is gone. What little Leo? What happened? Heard it was his heart. This city wears the kids out. Too much stress, too many sleepless nights. That's right. They just go like that with no illness. Leo's spirit hovering right there saw it all, heard it all, and could do nothing. He floated suspended between 2 worlds while everyone mourned what they believed to be a natural death. He wanted to scream to tell his mother the truth, but he was just a silent ghost. 2 days after the body was discovered in the room still thick with grief, Leo's phone rang. The screen lit up Aria calling. Maria, sitting motionless by the bed, unable to leave the room, was startled. She hesitated, her heart aching, then picked up the phone. She pressed the answer button. Aria's voice came through dry and impatient. Hello, Leo? You finally answered? What the hell have you been doing for 2 days? Do you have any idea how worried I've been? A pause. Leo. Answer me. I'm talking to you. Then a slow, broken voice replied. This is his mother. Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am, Aria replied, her tone shifting slightly. Where is Leo? My son. Maria's voice broke. He's gone. On the other end of the line, Aria didn't answer right away. Then there was a sharp intake of breath. Gone. But how? When? Where is he? I want to see him. I have to see him. Please, ma'am, I'm begging you. Maria nodded unconsciously, as if the voice on the other end could see her. Her grief was too immense for rational thought. Maybe this girl really did love her son. If you want to say goodbye to him, she said, her voice hoarse, come to Long Island. We're burying him in 2 days. And she hung up. After the final arrangements were made, Leo's body was placed in a simple pine coffin. A hearse carried him away, escorted by tears, a few cars of friends, and the mournful roar of his fellow delivery riders on their motorcycles. The journey from the Bronx to his childhood home on Long Island, where the sky seemed bigger and the air cleaner. The old parish priest rang the church bells. The son of the city has returned in silence, he said. May the earth be gentle with him, and may his name be carried to the angels. The coffin was placed in the middle of the family's living room. The neighborhood women who had watched Leo grow up began to sing sad hymns. Leo's mother no longer spoke. She no longer cried. She just sat there staring into space as if listening to a voice no one else could hear. And in that space, Leo's spirit still swirled, trapped present but invisible. Aria arrived in the afternoon. A sleek black sedan out of place on the quiet suburban street pulled up in front of the house. She stepped out dressed head to toe in designer black, her face hidden behind large sunglasses. She walked through the whispering crowd and straight into the house. She approached the coffin, slowly removing her glasses. She leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on the polished wood. Then, in a very low voice, she whispered, "You were so sweet, so perfect. It's a shame it had to be you." No one heard those words, but Leo's spirit standing right beside her did. He watched her motionless, a silent rage building in his incorporeal soul. Aria cried, but there were no tears. She moaned, but there was no pain. She hugged Maria, who was lost in her sorrow, and played the perfect role of a heartbroken girlfriend. The neighbors looked at her with pity. Poor girl. They were such a beautiful couple. And as she stepped back into the crowd, a discreet, almost imperceptible smile flickered across her lips. That night, Aria left. She didn't stay for the vigil. She didn't eat anything. She simply told Leo's mother, "I can't take it anymore. It's too much pain. I'll call you later." She got into her luxury car and disappeared in a cloud of dust from the country road. The next day, Leo was buried. As the first handfuls of dirt were thrown onto the coffin, a final sense of finality settled over the small cemetery. His mother stood there silent as a statue while her son's spirit screamed in vain. A week later, at an exclusive, discreet club in Manhattan, there she was. Aria. Not a hint of mourning, not a trace of guilt. She sat in the VIP section alone. She didn't need to speak. Her aura said it all. A young man approached wearing a well-pressed suit and expensive watch, but with a genuine smile. He approached her. "Excuse me, are you sitting alone?" She turned her head, slowly, and smiled at him, the exact same smile she had given Leo a few months before. "Until now, yes," she said. He sat down. They talked. They laughed. She played the perfect role of an innocent, curious, beautiful, and slightly mysterious girl. And in a dark corner of the room, Leo's spirit watched it all. He didn't know how or why he was still here. Maybe the ritual hadn't taken his entire soul. Maybe it was the rage that tethered him to this world. But here he was, invisible, a captive witness. He understood the pattern. It was her. It was them. And he was just a name on a list. Then suddenly a buzzing started in his consciousness, like a bee trapped between two worlds. A faint but growing vibration. A ringing. Leo's eyes flew open. His throat was parched, the back of his shirt soaked in cold sweat, and his heart was pounding like a war drum. His eyes frantically searched for a coffin, a red room, his mother's grieving face. But no, he was in his bedroom, in his familiar studio apartment in the Bronx. The orange glow of the streetlight streamed through the window, painting streaks of light on the peeling wall. So, it was all just a nightmare. A terrifyingly vivid nightmare. "Oh, God," he exhaled. He slowly planted his feet on the cold floor, feeling its solidity. He touched his chest, his face. He was very much alive. But his stomach still had a dull, burning sensation. And in his head, the image of Aria smiling beside his coffin refused to fade. The phone on the bedside table rang again, insistent and shrill. He looked at the screen. Aria calling. A chill ran down his spine. Everything from the dream came rushing back with frightening clarity. He hesitated for a second, then answered. "Hello? Leo, are you kidding me?" Aria's voice came through sharp as a knife. "It's after 8. You were supposed to meet my parents at 7. I've been waiting for you. You didn't even call. Were you sleeping?" Every word she said matched exactly what he had just experienced. The nightmare wasn't just a dream. It was a warning. "Yeah, I overslept," Leo stammered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Your call woke me up. Send my apologies to your parents. I'll be right there." He hung up, unable to say another word. "Well, that was a weird dream," he muttered to himself, trying to reassure himself. Luckily, it was just a dream. But his intuition screamed otherwise. He quickly dialed the number of his best friend Ethan. "Hey man, where are you?" "Home watching the game." "What's up? You sound weird." "Meet me in 30 minutes. I'm begging you. I need you to come with me. This is serious. Life or death." Ethan didn't hesitate for a second. "All right. Send me the address. You know I'm always here for you, bro." An hour later, the two young men stood before the Vanderbilt mansion. The wrought iron gates opened without a sound, just like in the dream. Leo shivered, his face tense with a disturbing sense of déjà vu. They were greeted by the butler. She motioned for them to enter. In the main hall, the layout, the atmosphere, everything was identical to his nightmare. Aria came down the stairs, a look of surprise on her face. "I thought you were coming alone," she said, her eyebrows slightly furrowed. "Yeah, but something came up. I'll explain later. This is my friend Ethan." She hesitated for a moment, then forced a polite smile. "All right. Welcome." Aria's parents appeared shortly after. Their surprise was veiled, their greetings polite, but an unease filled the room. Leo felt it. Ethan, though he didn't know what was going on, also sensed the tense atmosphere. Dinner was served. The famous venison stew, the same tender, bitter-tasting meat. Ethan ate slowly, curiously. Aria watched him. Leo, feigning a need for the restroom, got up. In the hallway, his stomach churned. He hesitated, then decided to go back. And that's when he saw it. Ethan was staggering. His hands were trembling, his eyes rolling back in his head as he gasped for air. Then he collapsed to the floor. In a flash, Leo remembered the dream, the coffin, the sacrifice. Panic seized him. He ran, opening one door, then another. The house was a maze. Finally, he found himself back in the downstairs bathroom, threw open the small window, and jumped out. He landed awkwardly. He ran without looking back. He ran until his lungs burned. A taxi passed by, and he hailed it in desperation. "The police station, hurry." Once there, he explained everything. The fear in his eyes, the terror in his voice. "My friend is in danger. They want to sacrifice him. I know it sounds crazy, but please believe me." One of the officers, an older man with tired eyes, frowned. "What's the family's name?" "Vanderbilt. Aria Vanderbilt." A silence fell over the station. The officer's expression changed. "You said Vanderbilt," he said, his voice low. "There were 2 unsolved deaths of young men reported in that area 2 years ago." 2 officers immediately got in their car. Leo gave them directions. At the mansion, they rang the bell. Nothing. 5 minutes later, the butler appeared, her face impassive. "They're traveling," she said. The officers exchanged a look. One of them said calmly, "Open the door, now." She hesitated, then finally relented. In the dining room, the table hadn't even been cleared. They searched the house until they found a hidden room at the end of a basement corridor. And there they found them. Ethan lying unconscious on a stone table, surrounded by Aria and her parents, all in red robes, chanting under the candlelight. "Police, drop your weapons." Aria's mother recoiled. The father tried to explain. "You can't understand. Tonight is the last Friday of the 6th month. The covenant must be honored." They were handcuffed and taken to the station. Initially, Leo was the one chosen for the sacrifice, but when he showed up with Ethan, the family decided to drug them both. Their plan was simple: dispose of Leo as intended. Then when Ethan woke up, they would lie and tell him he had slept for a long time, and that Leo had to leave unexpectedly. The problem was, the sacrifice had to take place on the last Friday of the month, according to the terms of the covenant. But when Leo fled, the Vanderbilts were forced to perform the ritual with Ethan to avoid the dire consequences of not fulfilling the covenant death. The next morning, 3 bodies were discovered: Aria and her parents stiff dead with their eyes wide open in their cells. No wounds, no poison, nothing. But their faces were frozen in an expression of absolute terror. Leo, meanwhile, was at Ethan's bedside in the hospital. He was lucky to be alive. When Leo heard the news about the Vanderbilts, he whispered as if to himself, "So I was your sacrifice, wasn't I? You failed." The wise do not chase after what they do not understand. They listen to their intuition even when it whispers against their desires. In a world where ambition often clashes with reality, it is essential to keep a clear head. Suspicion is not a flaw. It is a form of wisdom.